If you have topics you would like to have us discuss on the Aging Well podcast, please click on the links in the episode description to send us a text or record your message or comments. We'd love to hear from you and how we can help you age well. If you benefit from the Aging Well podcast and would like to support the content financially, please click on the Support the Show link or support our affiliates and advertisers. Welcome to the Aging Well podcast. I'm Jeff Armstrong here with Corbin Bruton. In this and the episodes that follow, we will share candid discussions on aging and hear from the experts. We are here to inform and encourage as we experience, well, aging. So Corbin, I know you may or may not have had me for exercise testing and prescription because I think I only taught it once in about the period of time when you were a student at Western Oregon University, but I've been teaching it recently, and one thing that always kind of comes up in class that really bothers me, and I share that with the students, and it came up this past week as we were talking about the norms for strength training. And I put up on the screen, I had the normative data for the 1 repetition maximum in the bench press. And I pointed out to the students, if at 20, I was able to bench my body weight, I was in fair condition. But now at 60, benching that same weight, being able to bench my body weight, puts me into like superhuman status, where I'm like above the 99th percentile. And I thought, that's kind of ridiculous because as we age, we want to be maintaining a certain level of our earlier fitness in order to age well. And so I thought that might be a good topic to kind of discuss today as we, go through the Aging Well podcast. So what do you think?
No, I think that's a great idea. And I also think that's one of our goals that we're trying to promote is having people either maintain their flexibility or maintain their strength or just maintain any aspect of life that we are eliminating the normalization of thinking, oh, that individual's old, therefore they're and they're weak. When in reality, I think we talked about it in a podcast of the discriminatory term of old man strength. And it's like, no, we can just maintain that strength as we age. It doesn't have to necessarily be whoa, that person's lifting their body weight at that age. But instead, we should be inspiring people to, hey, I can still lift my body weight at my age. And I never lost that strength. In fact, I've either maintained it or I'm weighing a little bit more, so I'm gaining that strength. I love this idea.
Another thing that I tend to talk about a lot with the students is I tell them how one of my goals, and it's somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but it's actually a little bit more of a real goal, is in my high school, we have reunions every 5 years. We missed during COVID, which was hugely disappointing. But I always tell my students that my goal is to go back to each of those reunions in progressively better shape than everybody else. And, initially, the first few years out of high school, everybody's a lot closer. Maybe some people get in a bit better shape. Athletes maybe are even in better shape. But eventually we start getting to this point where the impact of aging starts to kick in a little bit. And, like when we talk about how as a norm, from 25 to 50, we can expect people to lose about 10% of their muscle mass. And then from 50 to 80, they lose an additional 40%. That doesn't have to happen. And if we just simply maintain that level of strength and fitness that we had in our 20s, and we carry that through our lives, you might have a little bit of decline just because of, a little less activity, a little less adaptability to the exercise, or whatever factor we're trying to maintain. You might see a little bit of decline over time, but that level of small decline is much less than the more dramatic decline that comes with inactivity and disuse. And so as we age, we start to separate ourselves from those. And when we talk about somebody being a super ager, all we're doing really is talking about somebody who is able to maintain their level of fitness beyond what the rest of their generation is doing. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. So you mentioned going to high school reunions and stuff like that. Since doing this podcast, has your goal kind of changed, or is it still just focused on, my goal is to be a little bit more in shape each and every year? Or has your goal switched to more of our spies theory, where it's not only I want to go to my reunion and be more in shape, but I also want to be going to my reunion and have a little bit more information that I did last year, or I've accomplished writing a book, or I've done something else? Or are you just focusing now on simply the physical aspect of it?
No, that was just really one example. Talking about teaching an exercise physiology class, but from the standpoint of well-centered fitness, that's the whole premise of my well-centered fitness approach, is that, you have this idea of Kaizen, which is the Japanese word for constant improvement. It kind of emerged out of Japanese business circles that, want to always be improving, always want to be improving. And I apply that to that concept of well-centered fitness. And I generally talk about well-centered fitness being an asymptote, that we're always going toward that closer point of perfection in that. And so whether it's spiritual, physical, intellectual, emotional, or social, we're trying to improve constantly. And in many regards, in some of those areas, maintenance, particularly in the physical area, tends to be a form of improvement, because as you look at the norms of the people surrounding you, if their performance is declining rapidly and you're maybe only slightly declining, then relatively you are increasing dramatically. So when I look at, the physical side is the easiest because we can measure a lot more of that, and we can see the progression we might be making. And so when I look at, squat strength or bench press strength, now my bench press is never going to go up because my shoulders are so messed up. And the more I try and push it, the more I'm going to get hurt. The reason my shoulder's bothering me right now is I was pushing my dips up, and I had like 50 pounds of added weight in my dips for sets of 5. And so you add that to my body weight at the time, that would have been, probably dipping about 275 pounds. That was a little bit too much load on my shoulders, and my aging shoulders are not going to get any better at being able to do that. So I'm not going to get stronger in those areas, but I can still maintain a reasonable level of strength. And looking at that bench press number, my bench right now, even with a bad shoulder, I'm sure I could painfully push my body weight. So that puts me, again, at that really high level. I think that's where we want to be. And for myself, I set goals daily in all those areas. And so I want to be continuing to grow spiritually, physically, intellectually, emotionally, and socially. And so those are just really separate goals. That's just the idea of being in better physical condition than others is more of a personal physical goal. I discussed my epigenetics test with True Diagnostic co-founder Hannah Wendt in episode 162. Epigenetic testing measures baseline and changes in your pace of aging, giving you the power to steer your anti-aging or health and wellness journey in the right direction. I learned that I am aging well. Click on the affiliate link in the episode description, use the promo code AGEWELL, and receive a 12% discount on your epigenetics test and monitor your pace of aging.
So using the example of bench press, you're saying that as you're pressing up, you're experiencing some pain in your shoulders, which I'm sure a lot of individuals do feel that way as they hit a certain phase of their life. We'll call it age. But there are ways to adapt and adjust to prevent that shoulder pain. For example, you could do a reverse grip bench press, which would take away some of that strain on the shoulder. Would you recommend people start adapting and adjusting their exercises as they age, or just maintain, or just continue to stick with the status quo of that bench press and just that regular range of motion?
Well, first of all, let me go back to the bench press. You keep bringing up the bench press, and I wish I didn't bring up the bench press because I think the bench press is one of the most overrated and most ridiculous exercises for us to base strength on because it is so bad for the shoulders. You know, you have power lifters that lift tremendous amount of weight, are constantly dealing with shoulder issues and injuries. Our bodies are not necessarily meant to be really benching heavy, and yet we have made that a standard of strength, and it's really kind of ridiculous. And as I age, I don't care about my bench. I don't care about that number. It's not going to tell me that I'm any stronger. And so, yeah, to maintain strength in my shoulder, I'm going to do things, or in my chest, I'm going to do things to accommodate, to minimize the risk of injuries. I think I've mentioned before the Mark Bell slingshot. I use that when I bench press to help just kind of protect that shoulder, but allow me to overload it a little bit more than I otherwise could with a weaker, potentially high risk shoulder. And my shoulders are high risk because of my genetics. It's not necessarily that I bench wrong or I lift wrong or anything like that. I just, it's inevitable my shoulders are going to probably wear out a bit. So I got to be a little bit more cautious in what I do. Right now, I mean, with the shoulder injury, I continue to bench for building and maintaining the muscle mass in my pectoralis major and, the surrounding muscles. I've been using chains because chains will allow me to unload it a bit at that weakest point where the muscle is at greatest risk of injury, particularly the coracobrachialis muscle, that small little muscle in the shoulder. If we tend to overstretch or overload in that stretch position, it can cause injury. So between the slingshot and then using the chains, I'm able to take the stress off the shoulder, but then as I progress through the movement, I'm lifting more weight, so I'm building more strength. So that's one way. Reverse grip. I'm not a big fan of reverse grip bench pressing. I don't feel like I load the muscle well enough doing that because it's just in a more awkward, different position. But again, that's one way. You could do things like doing floor bench press, where you're limiting the range of motion. Most of it is just kind of preventing yourself from injuring yourself. And so the bench press is not a high priority exercise for me. What I would place as one of my greater markers of overall strength, call it old man strength if you want, is my Zercher squat. And when I'm seeing those numbers go up and I'm squatting more weight with the Zercher than I've ever squatted back squat in my life, and doing that at 60. So I look at that as a marker beyond the norms. But there's no norms for me to be able to compare what's my Zercher relative to others my weight. But if you compare it to back squat norms, it's going to be the same thing again. It's like, if I was benching at my 20s, I'd probably be considered rather average. Although I don't know, I would say probably my Zercher squat according to the norms, if there were norms, and knowing the athletes that I'm around, high school and college individuals, I'd be okay in the 20 range as well. But that normative data, the whole point is we look at normative data across the fitness parameters. There's always that expectation that as we age, there's going to be a dramatic decline in that performance. You see it in body composition. If my latest body composition was about 20%, which is higher than I want it to be. A lot of factors kind of contributing to that. Working on getting that back down. I'd like to be down closer to like the 14 is a more comfortable, healthier body composition for me. That 20% in my 20s would be considered probably on the more fair average range. But as a 60-year-old, it's really good. And it's like, again, why are we encouraging people to decline in performance and health as we age, rather than saying, as we age, it's okay to move from superior to good to fair, as we age. Instead, we have this normative data that basically makes it acceptable to decline in performance. And so I think if we're trying to promote aging well, we have to encourage people to be working to better their spiritual, physical, intellectual, emotional, and social selves as they progress through the years.
Yeah. So I know you hate the term train like an athlete, but
I do.
maybe
That's a stupid phrase.
But
Um,
but maybe we could change it to train with an athlete mentality. And I'm not saying like put your body through the heart and just destroy it as you get older, but have that mindset of I'm going to continuously push myself in order to better myself in the game of life, right? So you the high school reunion and how some of the athletes may maintain more strength as they age. I would assume that that would not be the case. I would assume that when they were in high school, they were super fit, super athletic, obviously training for their sport. And as life took them down a road, maybe they stopped working out, maybe they're not playing that sport, maybe they're not exercising, maybe they got married and had kids or work a desk job or whatever the case may be, and they've limited their ability to have time to work out or exercise or focus primarily on their health and fitness. And so they've actually decreased in that physical strength or that ability. And I think there needs to be a good balance, because like an athlete, where athletes had that busy lifestyle when they were in school, they still prioritize their nutrition or training. And maybe that would be something that we kind of promote here, is having the individual not make the excuse of, oh, I didn't have time to work out today, or oh, I was too busy, and they're prioritizing their life around their workout regimen. They don't necessarily need to push themselves and kill themselves like what athletes do to that elite level of training, but at least have the ability of, I'm challenging myself every single day and I'm getting better every single day, and I'm getting stronger or faster or whatever the case may be, because I'm going to be winning the game of life versus I'm going to be winning the game on the field or court or whatever they at. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
yeah, there's so much to unpack there. I mean, to talk about training like an athlete, first off, an athlete beats the crap out of their body to improve performance. There is nothing healthy about being an athlete. We tend to think that there is, and that's why I don't favor this idea of train like an athlete, even if we massage it into training with an athlete's attitude or whatever, because training like an athlete means that you are pushing your body beyond normal levels of performance in order to exceed the performance of everybody else. That's what an athlete does. And the body is not necessarily designed for those levels of performance. Yeah, we can tap into the body's potential, but there's a price to be paid training like an athlete. And a lot of athletes, when they complete their competitive life, their bodies are so beat up. And that's why oftentimes you'll see a lot of athletes really get out of shape after they've retired from their sport, because they're just tired of it. Their bodies can't handle it anymore. And they have to ideally shift gears to a more balanced approach to fitness. And so when we're looking at trying to encourage people to train like an athlete, we're giving them the wrong message. I think what we need to be focused in on is training for performance. We want to be working to improve our overall performance. And you brought up the point of prioritizing life around their training. I think that's a horrible mixed message, because it
Really?
should be the opposite. We don't want to prioritize life around training. Again, that's what an athlete does. And that isolates them into that physical parameter of the well-centered fitness. So a lot of times they're sacrificing much of their spiritual life. They're sacrificing intellectual life. And college students have a tremendous challenge in trying to balance their academics and their athletics. And then you have, their social lives and their emotional lives. I mean, all of that takes a backseat to athletic performance. And so when we talk about prioritizing life around training, we don't want to do that to age well. We want to do quite the opposite. We want to prioritize exercise around our life. And so when we look at improving performance and kind of trying to maintain that high level of performance as we age, we want to be prioritizing exercise to be able to live our lives. You see the kind of the flip in that idea that, if we prioritize the life around exercise, then exercise becomes all of our life. And we're going to beat our bodies up, and we're going to sacrifice spiritually, intellectually, emotionally, and socially in order to improve that physical performance. But if we prioritize our exercise around life, then we get better time management. We start looking at, okay, I have all these other things to worry about. How do I take the time that I have available in life, that opportunity cost, to be able to exercise effectively in order to at least maintain a level of performance as I attempt to age well?
I think what I was saying was what you just suggested. At least it made sense in my mind, but hearing you say prioritize exercise around your life, that also makes sense. I was just trying to say, I guess, quit having the excuse of, oh, I didn't have time to exercise. If we put exercise as a priority in our life, we prioritize our health and our fitness and our overall well-being, then the rest of life, you just kind of, in my mindset, you're just kind of penciling in around you, right? So, you have to go to work, and that's what, 8 hours of your day, that work. So you can either prioritize getting up early and working out, or hitting the gym right after work. Whatever the case may be, get that exercise in, get that fitness in, get that nutrition in, but also prioritize sleep as well, because we know the importance of recovery. We also know the importance of that social aspect. So I feel like we were saying the same thing. Maybe it just wasn't coming out the same way.
Maybe, I don't know, but I do think it's, if we overemphasize the exercise, then we start getting sucked into that whole mentality of spending hours and hours at the gym and doing more than we really need in order to, maintain that level of health and fitness that we need to age well. And, we go back to kind of the basic 5 movement patterns and spreading that out over 6 workouts per week. We don't need a lot of time to build and maintain strength. You have to look at what is most important.
So, what is most important for defying the norms and aging well?
Well, I believe what is most important is achieving and maintaining a level of performance that will allow one to maintain a moderate to high level of performance as they progress through the third age. Ideally, setting the standard of function higher earlier rather than later in life.
Gotcha. So it's kind of like setting oneself up for old man strength in the third age.
Or old woman strength, since we are forced to use the moderately offensive terminology. I told my students recently that I want to see it referred to one day as Armstrong strength.
Armstrong strength. I like that.
But in all seriousness, I just want to see the norm to be aging well.
So, what do we need to do to defy the norms and age well?
Whatever your age or fitness status, start now. Consider the health-related and neuromotor skill-related components of physical fitness. Carve out a reasonable amount of time in your schedule to prioritize health and fitness.
And establish a regular sleep pattern, lose excess body fat, and eat a healthy diet.
And don't smoke. And I'm coming around to understanding, at least to an extent, what you meant by, quote, prioritizing life around fitness, unquote. To be clear, though, physical fitness is not our sole purpose. Our purpose is to be well-centered spiritually, physically, intellectually, emotionally, and socially. Physical health and performance are important, however, to our spiritual, intellectual, emotional, and social well-being.
The keys to our health are biomechanical, psychosocial, as you say.
They are.
So, what does it take to defy the norms and be a super ager?
Stick to the basics. Lift weights to be stronger, not just prettier. Have you seen the videos that have been circulating of the woman lifting weights and saying, I don't want to be strong like man who is pretty. I want to be strong like bitch who fights bears in forest. I see this as an attitude of defying the norms.
So myofibular hypertrophy over sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, strong muscles over pretty muscles.
I'm not opposed to looking good but strong, call it old man strength as you will, if it's what we need to age well. So in addition to strength training, efficient and effective cardio for cardiorespiratory health and performance include activities that vary tempos and planes of movement. Just move and focus on body fat, but not from a disordered compulsion. Seek to eat healthy and be healthy.
And a healthy body composition to age well.
I think we need to reconsider how we present normative data. As it is, we encourage people to progressively get out of shape as they age.
So as we age, we should seek to move up in fitness category.
More or less. And remember, we can do this by roughly maintaining fitness. Average becomes extraordinary. Remember, we talked parentheses around extra in one of our recent podcasts. So extraordinary as we age simply by challenging the norms.
By challenging the norms, it seems to me that we're always seeking self-improvement, right? We're getting our spiritual, psychosocial, and it doesn't matter about looking good. It's about feeling good, hitting those goals, getting stronger, maintaining strength, moving up in a fitness category as we age. Make sure that we're getting proper nutrition, a proper sleep weight, make sure our body composition is lowering to a smaller level of body fat. By doing all of this stuff, it's going to help us age well.
Thank you for listening. I hope you benefited from today's podcast. And until next time, keep aging well.